Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Up the Ladder. As always, I'm Nate Stein, and joining me today is a very special guest. He's the director of speed and movement for UCLA football from South Carolina, where he played his high school football, to Knoxville, Tennessee, where he was a 4-year letter winner for the varsity football team at the University of Tennessee, with stops along the way at University of South Carolina, Ole Miss, and now at UCLA. Corey Miller. Corey, thank you so much for being on Up the Ladder.
Thank you for having me, man. I appreciate the opportunity.
So let's dive right into it. Director of speed and movement. Let's define what that means for our listeners who maybe don't know the specifics that kind of go into training a football athlete or any athlete, and what director of speed and movement really means day to day.
So the director of speed and movement position is just essentially training guys with the final goal of increasing acceleration, speed, max velocity, and overall just health and wellness as far as mobility, flexibility, and those things are concerned. And so, what we specialize in, I train the bigs, so the offensive line and defensive line. And so obviously there's a different way that you're going to train those guys, or at least approach your training with those guys, than you would a wide receiver or a defensive back. So we spend a lot of time utilizing sled pushes, sled drags, a lot of overspeed jumps, overspeed training, French contrast training, you name it. I mean, we're going to touch all facets of training depending on what phase we're in of the year. But as long as these guys are able to increase their speeds, as long as they're able to maintain their flexibility and mobility over the course of training, I think we've checked the boxes that's going to help them perform on a football field.
Amazing. That's so cool. So when did you know you wanted to do something like this, whether it was strength and conditioning or specifically focusing on the more technical abilities within speed and movement?
It's funny because if you had asked me after I got done playing college ball, if this was something that I wanted to do, I would have given you a resounding no immediately. Like, absolutely not. I do not want to be a part of this. But it wasn't until I actually lived in Rome, Italy, that I found a love for this field. And I found that love. We trained at I call it a fishbowl gym. It was in Lido, Ostia, glass gym overlooking the beach. Beautiful experience. But the Italian members of that gym, they would come up to me and they would ask, like, hey, can you help me train? Hey, can you help me train? Obviously, like, being the big American in the weight room. Yeah. And I was like, that's pretty cool, man. I mean, it's something I might be interested in. And the more and more it happened, and people were like, are you going to do shows out here? Do you bodybuild? I'm like, no, but man, I appreciate it. And so when I came back to the US, that's when it hit me. I was like, ball is probably going to be over at this point. Mm-hmm. What's going to be my next step? And I had a friend of mine who hit me up at a gym, and I kind of got my foot in the door and just rolled with it.
That's amazing. You actually touched on ball ending at that time and kind of getting you into it. So I kind of wanted to ask, besides obviously going through the workouts for 4 years in college and 4 years in high school and having a basic understanding, having been in the gym so much training, did you do anything to help you prepare for your role after you were done playing football, or did you just kind of dive in?
I dove right into it. And it's funny you mentioned those 4 years at Tennessee. Those were weird years, man. I had so many different coaches. There was so much turnover. It was kind of a messed up situation, if you want to be honest. But I mean, I walked into one strength coach. I probably had 4 or 5 different strength coaches during my tenure there. So that's a lot of different terminology, a lot of different philosophies, which it doesn't help you as a player, but it does help you as a coach. And so I kind of look back at those opportunities as something that prepared me to just dive into it when I was done.
That's so interesting that you touched on having so many different philosophies and terminology, because obviously there's a lot of information out there, some of it good, some of it bad. You're going to get a little bit of everything. One of the things we're trying to focus on at SPKN is getting the right research-backed, peer-reviewed information out there to help coaches or athletes that were in the situation that you were. What did you notice working with so many different coaches in such a short time span?
Everybody has their own blueprint. And that helped me understand, a lot of coaches like to say there's more than one way to skin a cat. I don't really like that term, but it just helped me understand that there are multiple different facets and multiple different approaches to elicit the response that you're looking for from an athlete. And so Some coaches may be traditional where it may be bench, squat, and shrugs are like the core of your program. And then you have other coaches who are Olympic based. And then you have other coaches who are, high intensity interval training based. And so it just gave me a broader outlook on the entire grand scheme. And so I came into the industry with the understanding of, okay, well, if this doesn't work, then let's target something else that's going to elicit the same response that I'm looking for. And it goes with exercises, it goes with exercise cues. One cue might work for one athlete, but it may not work for another athlete. And so the coach's eye and the way that you interact with these guys, you can grow exponentially just based off of experience.
Very cool. Was there something that you learned as an athlete or in a couple of your stops before UCLA that was a piece of advice or even a piece of knowledge that just kind of stuck with you and maybe made something click and make you say, hey, like this is definitely how I want to attack this piece of my program now because I heard a coach say X, Y, Z to me?
Absolutely. And one of those things was just understanding at the end of the day, it doesn't have to be a one size fits all approach or one size fits all mentality. And let's talk Olympic based training, for example.
Okay.
The big deal is power cleans. Everybody likes to talk about power cleans. Cleans. Okay, that's all fine and good. I mean, you're going to get your triple extension of the ankles, knees, and hips that you're looking for, but you're going to get that force absorption on the catch as well. But what I was taught was that some guys obviously can't clean. Some guys don't have the capabilities of catching a bar, whether it be lat immobility, whether it be wrist immobility. And so I got to look at different ways, whether it's med ball training, whether it's trap bar, clean pulls with a catch, whatever the case may be. There's going to be different ways to help those athletes generate enough force and power to elicit the responses you're looking for. And so understanding, as I came in, like it was cleans. And I was like, yeah, man, we're going to do cleans. I'm going to teach everybody how to do cleans. And then it's like, you get that athlete who, one, maybe you can't communicate with because he doesn't necessarily speak the language, or two, he doesn't have the physical capabilities of doing what you're asking him to do. And so now you have to try to find another avenue.
So where do you start when you run into something like that, where you do maybe need to find a different avenue and either exclude a lift or work up to a lift?
Communication. Communication. And that's the biggest thing. I love being able to be, one, relatable to my athletes, but also two, understanding. And I'll talk to a young man and I'll say, okay, hey, is this something that you can do? And if the athlete says no, then I'm like, okay, well, let's try to target something else and let's see if this is going to help, benefit you a little bit more. Obviously, the rest of the group is going to do this, but then we'll take you to the side and we'll work this. And then on your off days, we'll come in and we'll work this technique and see if this is something that we can eventually get you to do. And so that way it's not like you're standing to the side. But
yeah,
the biggest thing is going to be communication, finding out what these guys are comfortable doing, and how you can help them, most use what you're trying to do.
Can that be a struggle sometimes, kind of getting those guys to a point where they're either comfortable or ready to admit, hey, I can't necessarily do this lift right now? Because obviously top level athlete, Division I football, there's pretty high expectations. And I can imagine there'd be some ego that could get in the way when you run into that.
1000%. You got, everybody's different. And so you got to be able to approach everybody where they're at. You got to be able to meet them where they're at and understand that everybody comes from different backgrounds. Everybody has a different way of mentally handling things. And so the one thing that I like to do is let everybody across the board know that I'm here to serve you guys. This isn't about me. I've already, I got my degree. I got my job. I'm cool. I'm here to make sure that you guys can reach your goals. And so whatever that takes for us to get there, you let me know, whether that means coming to the office after we get done with workouts and sitting down and talking about something, whether that means, letting me know that maybe you got some frustrations going on this day. And so we might need to pull off on the intensity that we're training at, just to help you on a day-to-day basis. I don't want guys ever coming into the training facility, one, in a bad mood or, just not prepared to do what we're asking.
Sure. So what does that day-to-day look like? In and out, you're sitting on campus at UCLA, in season, let's focus on, just because obviously there's going to be a little bit more going on when you're in season, but kind of clock in to clock out. What are you doing on an average day?
So I'm getting into the facility around 5:45 to 6 a.m. And at that point, it's normally I set up the day before. And so the setup process is very minimal that next morning, maybe just putting bands out or something, but setting up for the training day. All the sheets are documented the day before. So all the weights are already put into the exercises, and setting the sheets out for the rack assignments. And then from that point, meeting as a staff, talking about what we're going to do this day, what are the goals we want to hit, what are things we want to watch out for, whether that's some guy that may be dealing with a specific injury on a certain area of his body. And after that, we bring the guys in. They have a certain time they have to eat breakfast by. So we're going up there, we're hanging out with the guys. We're just letting them know, like, this is what to expect today.
Okay, so you're just getting to breakfast at this point then?
Yeah, so breakfast is going to be 6 a.m.
6 a.m. breakfast. So what time are you starting everything, getting everything set up that you didn't get to the previous night?
So we start everything by 6. And
okay.
7:30 is when the first workout group is going to start.
Okay, got it. Wow. So yeah, you're hitting it early, you're hitting it hard, you're staying pretty busy.
Absolutely. And the good thing about it is we knock all of our things out early. The class schedules are set up in the afternoon because we have a morning practice schedule. And so that's really good for the guys.
Yeah.
We don't necessarily start as early as other universities do. We really like to emphasize rest and recovery for our athletes because that's the biggest portion of how we're going to get them to progress.
Okay. So we kind of went through the day-to-day, what you're doing, your grind. What's something that's happened to you while you've been working? It could be any of your stops or even when you're a player where you found yourself in a situation and went, if I didn't experience this, if people weren't around me, nobody would ever believe that this just happened to me.
Okay. It's actually pretty funny. I had an athlete who was from Jamaica, and this athlete struggled with English when I first initially met this young man, and so this is where I grew as a coach, because I was giving him verbal cue after verbal cue, and I was getting so frustrated. I'm like, this young, he's not getting it. He's just not getting it. And so what I had to understand is, and what I learned, one of the biggest life lessons I learned was that if a young man doesn't understand something, if a young man doesn't know how to execute an exercise, or he doesn't know how to perform at a high level, it's not that young man's fault. It's my fault as the coach. And that's how I approach all of my training. If you don't understand something, that's on me. It's my job to understand you and to get you to accomplish things at a high level. And so finally I talked to my head coach at the time, and he was just telling me, hey, you grab a barbell, tell him to do what you do, and you demonstrate it. And as soon as I grab the barbell next to this young man, boom, just like that, he picks up everything that we're doing. And he gets it, he understands it. But it took me getting out of my comfort zone and getting out of what I'm used to, or what I've always known, and branching out and trying a different way of getting it to happen. And so this same athlete had issues with pull-ups, and I've never seen this before, but he breaks down crying doing pull-ups. And I'm like, hey man, what's going on? He points to his bicep. He's like, it's gonna pop. And I'm like, no, that's not how it works. It's not how it works, man. I was like, that's straining the muscles of what you're doing right now when you're training. And so he had never been through a training program before, being from Jamaica. And so this was his first time doing it. And so this young man has this understanding in his mind that, man, I'm going to blow my bicep on these pull-ups. And I had to get him to understand that this is what you feel when you're training. Training is very difficult. It has to be difficult in order to generate adaptations in your body. And so after a few weeks of doing pull-ups, he starts loving it, and the whole demeanor changes in his training experience. And now he's coming in early, he's ready to attack extra work. He wants to feel that burn at this point, because he knows that he's going to get stronger and that he's going to get more powerful through experiencing this process. It had to be taught to him in a manner that he could understand, like, okay, this is what you're supposed to feel. This is why you're feeling it. And this is where we're going with it. And so it just gave me a completely different outlook on training in general.
Yeah. Does that happen often, where you have an athlete on your team or in your program that's maybe never been in a focused or specific strength or training program before?
Absolutely.
That seems like something that might be more rare just based on the level of sport that you're at. That was pretty surprising to me to hear that he had never been involved in something like that.
Yeah, it happens pretty often, depending on where the young man's from. Certain areas don't really utilize a strength training program in high school. And then you got to think about high school strength training programs.
Sure.
The emphasis now is on hiring educated and certified strength coaches, because now we have started to see the benefits of strength training. But, a few years ago, you got a position coach on your high school football team who they're like, hey man, just go in there and lift these guys.
Yeah.
And they may not have any prior experience. And so you get a lot of athletes who would come into a university who, one, are already injured, and you got a lot of things you got to clean up. But number two, they don't even understand how to train. And so we're going from ground zero.
Interesting. All right. So we're just about out of time. I want to hit one more note. It's something we do on every show we have on SPKN, and that is our coach story to finish up. So this is something that can be from your time as a coach, your time as an athlete, just something you've witnessed, positive, negative. We just want a memorable coach story that we can share with our audience.
Oh, wow. Let's see.
And if you got a couple, that's okay. You don't have to keep yourself to one if you have a few that are running through your head that you need to get out.
I think honestly, the most memorable coach experiences for me are the relationships that are built, and holding on to those relationships. I have a handful of athletes who I talk to on a weekly basis, and the thing about strength and conditioning for me is that it's not about strictly weight training or strictly speed training. It's so much bigger than ball, and when you can get an athlete to understand that you are here for them in the long run, that it's just not, I'm here for 2 years and I'm gone and you'll never see me again and you'll never talk to me again. Because I truly believe in order to get the best out of a young man, there has to be a two-way street mentality going on here. You got to understand that I care about you and that you care about me as well. I care about your well-being. I care about where you're going in life. I care about you getting a degree first and foremost, but also playing at a very high level so you have an opportunity to provide for your family. And so all of my memorable coaching experiences are the moments where you've already built these relationships. These young men know you care about them, and you get into these training sessions and the energy is so high and everybody is supporting one another and they're high-fiving and they're screaming and yelling, and you get to feel the genuine camaraderie between the athletes. And then let's say you leave that university and those same athletes are contacting you like, man, miss you, coach, man, hope you're doing well. Hey, coach, I'm getting married next week, man. I'm going to send you a wedding invitation in the mail. Hey, coach, man, I just had a daughter. I really want you to see her, man. Here's a video of her. Like, those are the things for me that make this industry so much more worth it than what people really understand behind closed doors. A lot of people, they just think you get to college and you come back and now your son's 2 times as big as he was before he left. And it's like, wow, you've really been training, but they really miss the aspect of what goes on throughout this entire training process. There are relationships built, created, the bonds that are shared between teammates. And I say that because I'm a guy who, when I left Tennessee and, talking about fast forward, I may speak to maybe 5 of my teammates, and it's really disheartening, and it kind of breaks your heart a little bit when you hear something like that. But, you try to educate the young men now that you do have about the realities of life and how life causes people to go in different directions. And so right now is the time to understand that the guy that you play next to, the guy that you train next to, is a true brother, man. And that these are guys who you have the opportunity to be a best man in a wedding, or you have the opportunity to be a godfather for somebody's son or somebody's daughter down the road. And so building these relationships and holding on to them right now and holding on to them as long as you can is going to make the aspect of your life down the road just so much more worthwhile and so much more a lot better. So I love just helping young men grow as men first and foremost, and as athletes second.
Oh, well, honestly, I cannot think of a better note to leave it on. That was absolutely beautiful to hear from you, Corey. And I can't thank you enough for taking some time out of your day. I know you're really busy with camp right now, helping out the LA Rams, and then you're going to be diving right back into work at UCLA. So thank you for being on Up the Ladder. It was so insightful, and I know our audience is going to love this.
Thank you so much again for having me, man. Thank you for reaching out, and anytime you need me, I'm here.